everyone. Karen Tate, say hello to the world at She Said Talks. Karen Tate is up in Oregon. She's our special guest today. I am Jan Jorgensen, and we have Anasuya from Berkeley. So we're the co-creators, Anasuya and I, of She Said Talks. And Karen Tate, just so you know, I've been following you in the periphery for years, and on my wish list I even posted it, be on Karen Tate's podcast. Tate has been in endless, deep service to giving a voice to the divine feminine. So you can see how she's aligned with being here today on She Said Talks. Her podcast is called Voices of the Sacred Divine Feminine. And one of her taglines is Stifled No More. And I'm like, yes, I just feel that surge of energy being released on the planet. Karen, I had no idea. I'm so glad you sent all your links. You are a mega author. You're a scholar. Her books cover the gamut: Normalizing Abuse, Walking an Ancient Path, Sacred Places of Goddess, 108 Destinations. Oh my God, I've got to get that book. Goddess Calling, Inspirational Messages, Voices of the Sacred Feminine, and Walking an Ancient Path. We have such a wonderful introduction for you. I'm going to have Anasuya take over for this section.
Welcome everyone to this program. We're so excited to have you here, whether you're live or on podcast recording. Either way you join us, we're so happy that you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And in my exuberance, I'd love to introduce to you the Karen who is here to bless us with so much wisdom about the divine feminine. And let me tell you a little bit more about her, because you gotta know. Karen is a thought leader, speaker, 7 times published author, and activist. Karen's work is at the crossroads of spirituality, personal transformation, and social justice. A woman after my own heart. She is hostess of the long-running Voices of the Sacred Feminine podcast. Guess we're going there next, huh, Jan? Considered a treasure trove of wisdom for more than a dozen years. A Karen economy conversation leader and power of partnership presenter. With the Center for Partnership Studies, Karen also earned certifications from Smith College in the psychology of political activism, women changing the world. All right, the divine feminine does that, changes the world with her breath, her beauty, her hip shaking, and her fieriness that chops off the eagle's head. So yeah, come on, Karen is definitely embodying that. Karen can be seen in numerous YouTube videos and viewed in the award-winning docufilm, Femme, Women Healing the World. So of course we got to see that, y'all. Named one of the 13 most influential women in goddess spirituality and a wisdom keeper of the women's spirituality movement, her body of work over the years, along with reviews of her books from students, peers, and colleagues, speak to her extensive leadership, knowledge, and expertise. We're so blessed to have you here, Karen.
You know, Anasuya, I swear I heard you say Karen commerce. And wouldn't I love that if people like Karen set the way that we interact? And by the way, you are breaking that old stale stereotype of the Karen.
Oh. Hallelujah.
You're the new Karen. So we even have a little bit more.
I was here first before.
There you go. Before they hijacked your name.
You're the real thing. Karen is also an interfaith minister, of course, who leads sacred tours, public and private secular, spiritual rituals, and gives talk to prestigious conferences and organizations such as the Joseph Campbell Foundation, Council for the Parliament of World Religions, California Institute for Integral Studies, American Academy of Religion. She earned an honorary doctorate of ministry for her many years of service to her community, and she teaches the Unitarian Universalist curriculum Cakes for the Queen of Heaven and rise up and call her name. Karen lives in the Pacific Northwest with her husband of 35 plus years, and she's a cat lady, ladies. 35 years of feline daughters, Lily, Luna, and Frasier. So a very deep, warm welcome to you, Karen.
Oh, you ladies, you're just so wonderful. I need you for my agent or my cheering squad.
Well, we're all in this together.
Thank you.
So I asked Karen, I said, well, what should we focus on? There's so much happening right now and emerging and being birthed in the divine feminine, but let's focus on you here a bit. And this is almost a funny question because I think everybody kind of has the answer. Have you figured out what your life purpose is?
You know, there's kind of a funny story to that. When I came here to Oregon 2 or 3 years ago, I started to delve into Akashic record readings. And in my first Akashic record reading, which is, I'll say, for a skeptical Virgo like me, it was really kind of an experiment. I didn't know how I felt about Akashic record readings at the time. I went into it asking, what is my life purpose? Am I fulfilling my life's purpose? And the reader, turned to the record, asked the record, and she turned back to me with an eyebrow raised, and they said, "Don't you know you're doing it?" And it was like, well, of course you are. And I don't know, I guess, we all need validation sometimes that we're on the right track and our path hasn't veered off and we forgot to make the turn, you know? So yeah, I think so. And I think when Lady Olivia Robertson with the Fellowship of Isis ordained me and gave me the title of Emissary Priestess of Isis and Sacred Geography, it sort of set me on the path. My life was going to be about raising awareness of the sacred feminine in a patriarchal culture, right? And that's not easy to do.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go on to question 2 here. You weren't always in a safe space to proclaim this. I've heard that you started out a racist from the Bible Belt,
Yeah.
yet here and now a feminist and social justice activist. What
Yeah.
was part of that shift?
Well, okay, so yeah, I grew up in New Orleans, and I say it now because I think it's so important because it shows that people, when they're educated, they can make the change, they can shift, they don't have to stay stuck in an ideology that maybe they grew up with. And yeah, in the South, it was almost our culture, our heritage. It was just normal and natural to be racist, as horrible as that sounds. I mean, I thought Rush Limbaugh was a god. I watched Fox News. I mean, can you even imagine it?
My,
And it does. I hate to let the words spill past my lips, but it's the truth, it's the journey, and it also gives me hope that people can shift their thinking as well. So the shift happened when my husband and I decided we were going to move to California. And I didn't know anything about the sacred feminine or social justice. Look, I didn't even know what patriarchy, misogyny, I didn't know about any of that because we don't learn about it in the bubble of the racist, sexist South, right? So I moved to California and I took a flunk class on the goddess. It was just almost an impulse, although I know there are no coincidences, right? And that sort of cracked the door open. And it was, just step by step. Uh, Goddess spirituality really brought me to social justice. Social justice brought me to feminism. I realized all of that, those ideas from the South, from the past, were ignorance and had to be shed and gladly shed those and hope I can be an inspiration for other folks to, do the same thing.
I have to
oh,
jump. I have to. Because You just gave me so much hope. And I don't want to step over that. The journey that you allowed yourself to go on, to be led by spirit on, is phenomenal. And so few people of any race choose to heed that whisper. But for you to allow it to take you out of the world, the small world that you inherited, that became yours, that was your truth. I mean, what you're saying about racism and misogyny and being unaware of it is normal for someone, just the same way that fish don't know they're in water.
Yeah.
You didn't know you were in that water, because that's everywhere. It's all you hear and see. Everyone you know thinks like that. Everyone you cross the path, even if they're a stranger, they think like that. So I'm saying this for the audience to understand why the pervasiveness of the culture she came from was undetectable.
It felt normal. It felt
It-
like that. That's how we are. These are our beliefs, and this is how we think.
Yeah, and it's not like normal, it is normal. And I say that because some of the listeners could say, oh, I'm not like that. I didn't grow up in a racist place, but they did. And see,
Yeah.
only Black person can tell you that. Because there's millions of ways to be racist, to uphold systemic racism, to uphold the belief and the delusion of white supremacy. There's many ways to do it. That's in the liberal North, that's in the progressive West, it's everywhere. So she is able to see because it was so in your face. But most of us are not aware. Most of us in white bodies are not aware of, they're also swimming in the same water. It just has a different accent, it has a different expression, has a different ways of showing itself. But
Yeah.
it's everywhere. And what I'm really pleased to hear, because I've seen this a couple of times, very few, but a couple of times, how Spirit was able to lead someone to the goddess, and the goddess led him to social activism. But you said, getting out the water, you led to the simple class on the a goddess took you to social activism, which took you to the divine feminine. So no matter which way you get to it, the minute we say we believe in a version of ourselves that is divine, that is holy, that is greater than us, and we see able to see the beauty in that, the power in that, somewhere along the line, a mirror is going to show up, and it's going to reflect it. But we are that, because we're seeing it means it's in us. We're not. We can't, if we can't see it outside, then we're never going to be able to see it on the inside. So I really wanted to pause and let people take that in, the power of your journey.
And honestly, if I could just piggyback on that a little bit, I think too, where I grew up, everybody, for instance, they looked at Jesus and, they thought Jesus had white skin and blonde hair and blue eyes, right? And I know there are probably a lot of goddess women who think of goddess with blonde hair and blue eyes and white skin, right? But as I really started to expand my horizons about goddess across continents and cultures, I really saw her as the poster girl for diversity.
Yes.
She was every color, culture. I mean, she helps us with body image too. When you look at the ample, voluptuous Venuses, she teaches us so much about loving our bodies, about diversity. I mean, I just feel like she's the role model for us on so many different levels. And diversity is one of them. She is all of us. We are all her. And there it is right there, in a nutshell.
I love how your script, as Anasuya said, for women who are like this, gives them hope that they can break free of those chains. And you said it in your talk. You said, I used to think, and now here you are. You're being called a new thought leader, an intellectual priestess, because you scholastically are studying matriarchal societies, the goddess. I mean, you're given a huge gift to the divine feminine community, something which before was
Yeah.
like this. So um, you've had numerous titles bestowed upon you by peers and leaders over the decades. So how do you see that as transpired? How has that happened? The script and suddenly the crown.
Um,
Amazing. You
well,
wrote the question, so you know the answer.
well, when Lady Olivia Robertson really, I think, got the ball rolling for me, made me start thinking of myself as potentially a leader or someone that could help advance goddess spirituality. When she realized Roy and I, that's my husband, we were leading sacred tours to goddess sites around the world, and she heard we were coming to Ireland, she invited us to Clonical Castle.
Oh
And
my
it was
God.
there. Yeah. I mean, it's like a fairy tale, right? They had turned a portion of the castle so in the lower areas into an actual goddess temple space. There was a sacred well down there. There were altars to all the different goddesses. And, I will never forget that for the rest of my life. I was ordained there, and she named me emissary priestess of goddess and sacred geography for the tours, for my dedication to Isis in particular, and because the emissary, I was spreading the word about the sacred feminine. So that's kind of the title I hold most dear. The other titles, I was given by this one or that one, because of the social justice work that I do, the community work that we would do to teach free, um, because, this was my calling. This wasn't something I made a living doing. I had a full-time job, but I
Wow.
ate and breathed and slept this when I wasn't sitting at my desk at work, right? Writing books, leading tours, started a not-for-profit called the Isis Ancient Culture Society. And I mean, this was what, my husband and I lived for. And so along the line, people just acknowledged the body of work, and I guess they were appreciative. I think Sage Woman Magazine might have been one of the people that bestowed one of those titles. There was a college that bestowed the doctorate of ministry.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's a lot that's happened in the last 35 plus years.
And you deserve it. You're saying all this. And I thought I met you on one of my Queen's Caravan tours, stopping in for Mexican food with all the divine goddesses, sharing my chocolate birthday cake. But I was ordained by Lady Olivia as well and went to
Okay.
a lot of events, but in Isis Oasis in Guerneville.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are always encouraging people to, oh, I love this, especially with Kamala, the rise of Kamala.
Kamala.
Kamala, there you go. It's the name. You're encouraging people to reconcile their spirituality and their politics. What does that mean?
Yes, indeed. Yes,
Go for
indeed.
it.
Okay. What I was seeing over and over in the community was women. I mean, look, I grew up and I, had it conditioned in me that, I mean, I hate to say it, but even as a feminist, I mean, I think we take this baggage with us, even if we don't want to, it's in our unconscious, that, politics is for men. Women don't get involved in politics so much. And you look, there's probably only 20% of women in Congress. So, that plays out in the statistics, right? And I found moving through the community that leaders, teachers were not saying anything about politics. It was if it was taboo. And I really believe that's a mistake. But there were some exceptions, and because Rianne Eisler was talking about a partnership society versus domination. Starhawk, of course, was out there doing her stuff.
Margaret.
Monica Shu with Cosmic Mother did bring up about socialism, actually. But for the most part, people wouldn't go there. And I would run into these women who were more concerned with what color candle they were going to put on their altar than who they were going to vote for in the voting booth,
Yeah.
or and I started to speak it out loud. Look, if you care about the earth, especially if you connect a goddess with nature, then it's a cognitive disconnect if you go out there and vote for a political party or a politician that wants to frack and destroy the environment. It's like, let's connect the dots here. If you care about women's rights, you don't go vote for a political party that takes their rights away. If you're a social justice advocate and you want equality for everybody, you don't vote for a political party that's going to take your vote away. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, right? And in fact, when the American Academy of Religion finally gave a spot at the table to us goddess advocates, because before then it was just the major religions had a seat at the table. I guess, they didn't see us as their equal for a time. Um, but when they did make a place at the table, I actually got one of those places. And the title of my talk was um, something about ecofeminist goddess spirituality, how, for a sustainable future. Ecofeminist goddess spirituality for a sustainable future. And word got out that my opening sentence was, "Goddess is a Democrat." And the room was packed. And you know what? I didn't have anybody ridicule me, boo me, or anything, because I made such a case for connecting the values of the sacred feminine, which were then recognized as values of Democrats and not values of the only other political party that's viable that we had. So I was just being honest and laying it on the table because nobody else had the courage to say it.
Yes, to be honest. And Asuya, I know you got something coming out of your mouth now. It's all yours. I'll mute myself.
No, you don't have to mute yourself. I think it's wonderful that this works as a conversation versus interviewee. I think it's the way women work. We work in circles, so this is normal. But I am chomping at the bit because the first thing you said about well, it'll come back to me. But the thing you just said now, is pointing to the very powerful, hypnotic, seductive spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is as dangerous as as gaslighting, because people are using their spirituality, their connection with the goddess, their high religiosity, blah blah blah, to justify, well, God's got him. God's going to protect them. Oh, the mother has them. They don't need me to go vote or march or protest or sit in or stand up. They don't need that because the divine has them. I'm just going to go plant more flowers. It's like, wait a minute. You are on the earth. You're in a body. You have been called, or think you have been called by the goddess to be her ambassador, to be one of her spokespersons. And you think the mother doesn't care about what happens to her children? You think you're not supposed to speak to and for them? What God do you serve? What goddess is this? Every Black Madonna I've been to, every goddess site that I've been to, everyone that I've studied, she is there for the people. She hears their prayers. She hears their cries. When they don't have food, she helps it to grow. When they need to find water, she leads them to them. When there's a war coming on, she protects them. She is very concerned if you deliver that baby or not. She's very concerned when you say, I need to have a baby, but my husband's going to leave me. Okay, we got you. She's there to protect women who are being beaten by their husband. I don't know one aspect of the goddess that doesn't deal with real life here on earth. Dang it. And when people ask me, why are you so into the Black Madonna? What's that? Isn't that racist? No, there are two different ones for a reason. Not one is better than the other, even though high patriarchy and racism will tell you they're different. In the mother's eyes, they're the same. The white Madonna is there to intercede on your behalf to get into heaven if you're Catholic, because if you're Protestant, she doesn't exist. The Black Madonna was always in the crypt close to the earth because their churches were built on top of goddess temples. And the people refused to have them be destroyed or her disappear. So because Black Madonnas are pre-Christian, they were there first, and they're there to help people with earth issues.
Yeah.
How are you getting along with your children? Are they fed? How's your husband doing? Are you working too much? Watch out for that dinosaur. You know, like that. Black Madonnas / earth goddesses are there to help people on earth. So any person who says they're a goddess worshiper, devotee, or whatever, that is not about social justice issues is not for real.
Yeah.
They're into performative. Okay, I have expletives coming out. Okay, they're into performative actions that look good
Or
to
at the
the
very
public,
least,
no substance.
or at the very, I totally agree with you 1,000%. Sometimes I'll call it goddess light, you know? And I try to make space because, look, I realize some of the women I met have grown up in authoritarian backgrounds. They don't even understand how that has traumatized them and maybe wounded them. Uh, you know, and they're afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid to offend someone. I mean, we're going through it right now in the city where I live. So many women are just afraid to even say where they are politically, and they'll whisper, "Yeah, of course I'm gonna vote for the first female president." But why aren't you shouting it? Of course
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote for
Yeah.
the first female president. And I'm torn between being frustrated and feeling sad for
Yeah.
them. But
Social media too. People are just, they feel allergic and scared because the level of antagonistic responses. But that's exactly when that anchoring divine mother comes in and says, well, thank you for sharing your belief. I believe this. I have people coming in on my private messaging, trying to teach me about this and that. And I say, place your beliefs, let's respect each other. It's crazy making.
yeah.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I got excited.
No, this is perfect. It's a conversation and we can handle it. Women are
Well, and the
multitaskers.
spiritual bypassing you met too, man, that is one of my biggest pet peeves because, the people who want to just throw love and compassion at something rather than taking a minute to be uncomfortable and maybe getting at the truth or solving a problem rather than gaslighting. And then because they're throwing love and compassion at it, they think they're morally and spiritually superior when really they're just afraid to be in a place of discomfort for a moment in order to be honest and
For
solve.
1 second, they can.
Yeah.
That's that fragility.
Yeah.
That is ruining the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way to put it. But you just made me also remember that the mother, divine mother of whatever name, color, language, culture you want, the divine mother is always with her children. So if there is a homeless person, she's sitting beside them. But are you going to be her and bring food? Are you going to be her and show them where they can get a shower? Are you going to be her and bring a bag of tampons and pads and pills for the homeless women that can't go anywhere and have their periods? I mean, like, who are you serving?
Yeah. That's not the superficial goddess of ancient times who separated herself energetically in a temple to stay clean. But we truly are prepared now to go out and be on the ground and work with real people and get real. The card that I picked today, it's perfect for right now. It's for our talk. Perfect service in an imperfect world.
Mhm.
Yeah, and here it is. I stay positive and I keep showing up in service, even though it's hard to see the big picture sometimes. I follow my guidance to work, to be present and hold my vibration in all settings. I acknowledge my courage, perseverance, and the importance of my presence. In settings, Spirit guides me to be in settings. Spirit guides me to be in I trust. So women who, and I love ritual. I love high ritual, but sometimes the costumes separate us, and parading around in costumes and just smelling roses all day and then going
Or
home and
incense and
living our
sage.
life. Yeah, we're on the ground. We are the representatives of the voice of the divine feminine on earth, and we need to use our voice and be real to penetrate the abyss of mistruth.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
speaking to the choir here.
well, and if people look to us as leaders, I think we let them down if we don't tell them maybe hard truths or things that are uncomfortable to say. It's like a loving mother who, I mean, look, Sekhmet is another one of my goddesses. I
Mm.
look at her as the goddess of tenacity, of healthy boundaries. Sometimes goddess has tough love for us. It isn't always,
Milk
glitter
and honey.
and glitter and
Right, right.
balloons. I
It's
mean, we're
like a nurse. You have to clean the wounds so that you know, the, infection can come to the top. You have to break that crust off. You have to break. So, Anasuya, I happen to know you have a list of questions there, and number 5 is yours, young lady.
Okay, well, I think I can handle that. And before I do
We're getting our
that,
routine down.
I just want to touch on the amazing things that Karen is saying about being socially active, politically active, and focus on social justice. Because when I'm in goddess circles and they're talking to each other, they're wearing their white, they're doing all these ceremonies. But when I ask them, what actions are you taking? Who are you serving? Where are you going out? Who are you teaching ceremony to? Are you going to schools to teach the teenagers? Are you going to domestic violence shelters? Are you going to the prisons? Like, who are you giving this amazing gift and connection to God with? Because I know if these women and girls had a connection to the divine being that's in them, their actions would be different because they would be outside of the bubble of this is all I know.
Yeah.
They would be outside of it. And
Comfort zone.
they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, you want me to do what? I said, I don't want you,
Yeah.
but whoever you serve would want this.
Yeah.
So that's for me, that's the barometer of if I get involved with that group or not. And I've had left and I'm leaving some others because their faith without works is dead. They're not doing anything. They're talking a lot, but they
Yeah.
talking to each other is okay. And I noticed because if I go to an event, I've been to several events with someone, some group over a year, and I noticed that they're not growing. They're not bringing in new people. It's always the same people who come. So that tells me they're not working it out. They're not going and serving the people who would come and say, well, where are you learning this? Where did
Yeah.
you get that? Can I come too? People would come if
Yeah.
we offered them this holy medicine of the truth. We are their mirror. And if that's the mirror they're holding up, it explains why 53% of college educated white women voted for Trump.
Well, if I can add a little bit more here, I just put out Walking an Ancient Path. It's been 20 years since it was out. And when it first came out, there was no ebook because back then they didn't automatically do an ebook. They just did a paperback. So at the 20-year mark, I used the opportunity to put out an ebook with an epilogue. And one of the things I mentioned in the epilogue was how things changed, how I've changed. And my outlook in priestessing has changed. And it dovetails with what you just said. I started really seeing the social justice activism of white women as being incomplete. They have their priorities, but the priorities of Black and brown skinned women weren't always their priorities. Were they marching with Black Lives Matter, or were they just worried about getting equal pay for equal work and abortion, which are very valid and so important, but they didn't have issues of classism involved. They
No
weren't interested
intersectionality.
in that. And so I've actually started thinking maybe womanist is a better term than feminist.
I
It
love
is.
Then it
It is.
encompasses not just what white women care about for social justice, but also Black and Brown and, Asian American women,
And
they
Native women.
and Native women too. Absolutely. It's more all inclusive.
Inclusive,
Womanism is a
that's
very
the word.
powerful theology. I'm into liberation theology, and it's hard to do that if you're not a womanist. Because feminism has a limit, and what you're talking about is a lack of intersectionality. They don't see where their concerns and the concerns of Black women who do a lot of the work, the Asian women, the Native American, the Latino, they don't see where they have to address all the issues of being a woman in a misogynist culture. And they're not interested in seeing how any other woman is, including trans women, are being treated and handled. It's like, oh, that's your issue, And this is how, talk about politics, back to the suffragette movement in the beginning, Candy State and what's the other one? Oh, what's it? There are two white women.
Singer,
Gage, I think,
Margaret Singer.
Sanger.
No, suffragettes, that's the 1800s. Well, anyway, there were two white women, Susan B. Anthony and Katie Stanton, and Sojourner Truth were the ones who were the biggest advocates for recently emancipated Sojourner Truth, became partners with them in the suffragette movement. But the minute the men said, well, we're going to give the vote to Black men first, led by the Frederick Douglass, who's saying we need the vote too, then the white women said, oh no, we're not going to let Blacks have it first. And so they turned against Sojourner and all the Black women who had been joining them, so that they could have, no, white women first. White people have to have the vote first, not all people. And I just see that repeating them.
Well, you know what? It to me, it's not just white privilege. It's what just how you were a Southern racist. I'm a white woman, and inclusivity and racism did not come to my attention till it got up close and personal. In other words, it had to break my lens. When I dated a Black fellow in high school, and all the other parents said, you can't hang around with Jan. And now my grandson is biracial, and those issues come up every single day. It now has a piece of my heart. But people protect themselves. I'm not saying that white women of wealth are debutantes, but you can keep looking up until it affects you.
That's the only time they pay attention. If it's not
Exactly.
they're never going to deal with it. And that's the heartbreaking things, because so many people are being murdered, so many people being snatched. The missing and murdered Indian women and girls is astronomical.
Yeah.
But people don't realize there's over 70,000 Black women as of 4 years ago. So I don't even know what the number is now. Over 70,000 Black women and girls who are missing. They don't know where they are. They don't know if they were taken. And one of the biggest things that is being happening, in addition to trafficking, human and sex trafficking, is Black women are being killed for their organs, because our blood is very different. We have a higher survival rate on many things, that our blood saves lives. And so
resilient. You know what?
We're being killed for our organs. They're just disappearing.
What Kamala said the other day in her increasingly magnetic, feminine languaging, it's upgrading. I'm praying for her just because I would
You
like
have to,
that.
because
And you got to
she's a
stop
target.
Project 25. But what she said was, if one of us is hurt, we are all hurt. And so that's moving into, that could be my daughter. That could be my mother. And until we have that, there won't be respect, oneness reflected in our political systems. So,
Politically active, and that's the part I'm talking about, intersectionality, which
yes,
is the biggest issue that Black women are dealing with, is because when Black women advocate for women's issues, all women benefit. But when white women advocate for women's issues, they're the only ones who benefit. And that's what a lot of people are not seeing.
they
Because
don't get it.
And they're not intentionally being intersectionality. Where can we work together? Where is this oppressing all of us? How can we support each other? How can I help you get more pay so that you can pay for daycare. And same with me. You know, how can I help you escape your troubled marriage? Just like I might want to help someone else. I mean, we got to see where they're saying, but also where we're different and we need a different response to it, you know. And that's why I'm so appreciative of your social justice activism and speaking on it, because really white women only listen to white women. So I'm glad you're doing it. And I'm so glad you're blonde, because, you know, like you're a real white person.
Well, and, just recently, I think you'll appreciate this as well. It was rather controversial, but, I don't shy away from controversy the way I used to. One of my newsletters was about white women's tears and how it's a tactic that white women use as leverage because they've been taught that they can't be angry because society wants to stifle women's anger. So they can get away with tears, and they've learned that they can use that for leverage.
Manipulate.
Yes, but it's manipulative.
And it has always worked.
Yeah.
So like, I may not be able to scream. I may not be able to legally have a gun. I may not be able to vote. I may not be able to get a bank account or get a credit card without my husband, but I can cry and I can manipulate and twist them around my fingers with my tears. And it has worked. So many people have been lynched, killed, slaughtered, murdered because of white women tears. And every time a Karen gets caught out in doing something I call fuckery, when she gets caught and loses her job or gets kicked out of her house or whatever, the tears come on and they're like, oh,
Victim.
And I was like, why does this keep working? How do people keep falling for this?
Because nobody wants to talk about it. It's just like, I think spiritual bypassing is a relatively new term. I think, white women's tears, I think women, I mean, you are, in a better place to say than I. My assumption is it's more talked about maybe in the Black or brown community than it is in the white community, because, white women just get disturbed by it. They're offended by it.
We have to talk about it because it's for us. We have to teach each other, and especially the next generation, warning signs. We have to teach us about how to survive. And it's very important for the next generation to understand that this is a tactic that has been used since before the end of slavery, like during slavery. This has been a tactic. She could cry and her husband will go and get someone whipped. She can cry and then somebody's child will be sold.
Yeah.
So this is not recent. This is white women's tears have been effective forever.
And the other part of that is, why are they using that tactic? It's because they have been taught that they can't use anger, that anger is a dark emotion rather than an emotion, that comes up because change needs to happen. Mm-hmm. Something isn't right. We've been conditioned as women to not get angry. Yep. And that's got to change too.
There's no place
felt safe.
There's no place for our anger.
Yeah.
Or let's take it up a notch. Justified rage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that.
So much justifiable rage. Just the mere fact that a woman has to drive 3 states to be able to get an abortion. Just the mere fact that a woman or a child can be raped and forced to carry the child to the rapist. And in most states, the father has rights to that child. So they can't even give it up to adoption. There's things we have a right to be enraged by.
Yeah.
Rapists do not go to jail.
Yeah.
Big double standards.
The list is infinite.
Yeah.
But to have DJT, I'll say that, get on one of his speeches and say, hey, you all should be voting for me and happy about it, because I'm the one who got rid of 50 years of progress for women. I'm the one who got rid of abortion. You should be behind me. And he said out loud, I'm the one who destroyed 50 years of progress for women. And there's not people on the street burning shit down.
Yeah.
Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the rage is real. I'm plugging in my computer. Hey, tell us about your podcast. You're going to be picking up some of these hot topics, right? Having Anasuya on it, and
Yeah. Hot topics. We have got to talk, sister. We have got to talk.
So yeah, I've been doing Voices of the Sacred Feminine, believe it or not, since 2009. And somebody made me realize that back then they weren't even called podcasts yet. We called it internet radio. And
Yes, yes,
um,
yes.
so yeah, and I did a show every week all those years. I did take a brief hiatus when my husband fell and hit his head and was recovering from a brain injury, and I was being stifled by a worker comp attorney because I had been attacked by somebody wielding a stun gun. So I was not able to do my show during that time, speaking about stifling and worker rights and all of that stuff. That's a whole nother show. So I took a little break, but then I came back about 2 years ago, and yeah, I'm back at it. And I've changed the format a little bit. I do still interview people, but I'm also sharing my own wisdom now. Where, the show was primarily, 50 minutes of someone else talking about their new book or a topic. I'm actually speaking about topics like we're talking about today.
Hallelujah.
And that way, I'm hoping that it becomes, it is a one-way conversation. I'm, talking to the audience, but I'm talking about these subjects because, I want to make some of these points that sometimes people who want to sell a book or sell a class are afraid to say because they don't want to offend someone. Well,
Mhm.
I'm not worried if you don't want to buy my book, because I say something that you don't like. I would rather be truthful and be able to sleep at night, Uh,
Hallelujah.
so that's I'm still at it, and all the archives are still there on Blog Talk, and I feel really good because I was able to interview so many of our foremothers who are really no longer with us now. So
Mhm.
you can go back into those archives if you have the patience to dig through. A lot of Lady Olivia Robertson is there, Carol Christ is there, Lane Redman, Patricia Monahan, Margot Adler, and of course, a lot of the foremothers that are still with us today, their voices
Mhm.
are there as well. Starhawk. I was willing, able to get all of these folks, as well as, people out in, the political world. I had Noam Chomsky on my show, believe it or not.
Woo!
Yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah, that
Good
was
stuff.
a two. And I'm trying to think who's the Indian woman that does all of her name's escaping me at the moment.
Who does
Uh,
what?
anyway, so yeah, I've had some pretty notable people on the show.
Are you talking about Vandana Shiva?
Yes, Vandana Shiva. Yeah, thank
She's
you.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm proud of it, and it goes on,
A,
in a new
A
form.
women. A women.
Yeah,
So you've traveled across 5 continents. Want to hear about that? Chasing down sacred sites and leading towards the goddess sites.
yeah,
I
yeah. That
want to
was
hear
kind
more
of
about that.
Well, that was another place I was kind of a trailblazer, I guess, because when Roy and I moved to California, we sort of married our interest of travel with our newfound interest in goddess. So I wanted to go to these places where a goddess had been worshipped at the center of society,
Mm.
these archaeological sites, these temples, these sacred groves, and the incredible museums. I actually look at the British Museum in the Louvre, where we have all of these incredible artifacts of goddesses as sacred sites too, And when I went to these places with Roy, it was such a profound effect on me. It wasn't like just reading about it in a book, it made it so much more real now, made me think about how Demeter and Persephone, I mean, those Eleusinian mysteries were practiced for 2,000 years. Do we even hear about that in our patriarchal Christian culture?
Please
Never,
preach.
you
Keep
know?
preaching.
And so to go to these places where, this was primary in these people's lives, it just brought it all to another level. And
Mhm.
so I said, you know what? If this is having this kind of effect on me, let's see if we can put tours together. Now, that was before they were doing goddess tours. A lot of these places were off the beaten path. I had to figure out, I mean, we literally had to rent our own vehicles and go there because there were not organized tours taking people to these sites. So we did that, for a number of years. And, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, we had a little business called the Special Journey Travel that
Ooh.
that we did
Okay,
on the
okay. Thank you for telling all this. I want to know what your favorite ones. Top 3. Come on, and why?
Egypt, believe it or not. And here I thought, here's this white girl from the racist South, and the place she is attracted to is an Egyptian goddess, a brown skinned goddess in Egypt, of all places, Um, who'd have thunk it? But yeah, Egypt was just incredible. And maybe it's part of that Egyptophile in my DNA somewhere, but France, Paris, particularly.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and the French loved Egypt. They were really big into Egypt.
So were
And
the Greeks.
yeah, and I think the other place was Turkey because
Hmm.
Turkey was really a diamond in the rough. It was like a melting pot of goddesses from all different cultures. It wasn't like you'd go there and just get Greek goddesses. No, you'd get Phoenician goddesses and um,
Sumerian goddesses.
yeah,
So
Sumerian
many.
goddesses. And so and people weren't traveling there to see goddesses. They were going and trying to follow the footsteps of St. Paul,
But they were missing that, I forget what her name is, but of Ephesus,
Yeah,
that woman
Ephesus.
with the
Yeah,
multiple breasts. I mean, like they were missing some great stuff in Turkey.
but that's the only place that they were going in Turkey was Ephesus
Okay.
because
Mother Mary. Yeah.
the tour boats you could get an excursion off the boat and go to Ephesus, but then all of the rest of Turkey nobody was traveling to see
Oh,
all
there's
of the
so
other.
many great
Yeah,
sites.
yeah,
But
Turkey's.
where in France is your favorite site? And you could say
Um,
several.
Well, I regret that I didn't get down to the south of France to go to the Cathar areas,
Hmm.
the Black Madonnas and Mary Magdalene. It was Paris because, there was something about the energy of Paris was so feminine.
Hmm.
It was the architecture, it was the language, it was the style of the buildings, it was the Louvre, it was a lot of the different museums. There was this one Gothic museum that had these incredible tapestries of the unicorn, the lion and the unicorns.
Yes.
There was just so much beauty in Paris. It's hard to language it, kind of.
No, it's not. I lived there 5 years, so I get it.
Yeah,
City of Light.
It's the city
yeah,
of,
City of
and what
Light.
I found is the city of inner lights. It's where most of my uh, spiritual awakenings happened in the 5 years that I lived there. So I understand completely. It is not just feminine energy, it is divine feminine energy there. And there are several goddess sites there, but there are two Black Madonnas there. And if you only went to one place in France, that's a good place. But down south is, as Jan can tell you.
Oh,
So I
it's
think we should do it, ladies. I think we should go to.
it's like my second home. Yeah. Let's all go and
Let's
believe.
organize that because it's
So
she's needed to be discovered by more people. She being
what I
all
wanted
her
to,
way she's expressed in the South.
what I wanted to say about the Black Madonna too, just for listeners who might not know, a lot of those Black Madonna statues, when you remove the paint, Isis was actually underneath. And the way I learned about the Black Madonna was everything you said, but also, and maybe this is just a different way of saying what you said, but also you said to her the things you couldn't utter to anybody else.
That's right.
Maybe you had a miscarriage, or maybe some other horrendous thing happened to you. And just like with Isis, one of the reasons why she was so beloved from the peasant to the emperor was people believed she heard their
That's
sorrows.
right.
Yes.
You know, so there's that Isis
Uh,
Black Madonna connection, so potent.
She takes
Absolutely.
you as you are. What is, is. And speaking of what is, we have time for about one more question.
And I have it.
Oh, you do? Oh, you
Yeah.
do? Do you?
Mhm.
Okay. All
I
right. Go ahead.
understand.
Go
I
ahead.
understand you're going to start a quarterly webinar for women and men, for women and men. Let me just say that. You're going to start a quarterly webinar for women and men. And the first one is coming up on September 29th, 2024.
Love that. I love
And
that.
it's the antidote for the wounded feminine consciousness. I want to know more.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I want people to know how things have gotten the way they are, and the fact that they weren't always like this, so we
Mhm.
don't have to think this is the only way things can be. And then, you know, once they understand the mechanisms at play that have created this world that we're living in, this imbalance, shall I say, I'll just call it that, that there are solutions. And as we step into those solutions, we find healing.
Mhm.
Because I believe we're all filled with trauma of one kind or another because of this patriarchal culture we live in. And men have been damaged by it, just as women have been damaged by it. And unless we are willing to look at it and heal it, then it stays stuck in us. And you never know how it's going to come out. It may come out as dis-ease. It may come out as poor choices. You know, we really do have to um, reassess and be willing to look within, I think, and start to maybe plan some exit strategies if you realize that, um, you know, there's some things happening in your life that you don't want to continue, and maybe they aren't normal. You know, maybe you've been tolerating normalized abuse, which was my last book. And so it's about identifying you know, the source of the trauma, recognizing it as normalized abuse, you know, and then finding a way to heal it. And
Yes.
and hopefully I'll be doing something similar, you know, on a quarterly basis. And it is for women and men because it's not just we women who have been damaged in this culture.
Well, let me just say one thing about that. Why this is the timing couldn't be better to talk about this, because one of the impacts of the wounded feminine is the wounded feminine in us, especially in men, that has created misogyny. And one of the things that every mass shooter has in common, whether they're 17 years old or 57, every one of them has a rough or tough or terrible relationship with their mother.
Mother.
All of them are misogynist.
Yeah.
And
Mother.
so there's many other common denominators. Let me just say that. So that's the wounded feminine expressing itself. And it's so important to heal that so that we can save more children, because they're choosing to go to schools because how can they hurt women the most? How can they hurt mothers the most? Take their children.
And I think to teach women that they really do have to have healthy boundaries. You know, we're entitled to have healthy boundaries. We can say no without guilt. I mean, you can go to Netflix or Prime right now, and there is a 4-part documentary called Shiny Happy People. I
That's
would
very moving.
encourage anybody to watch that. And this is not happening in some third world country. This is happening in our backyards of probably almost every city around the United States. Please, listeners, go look for shiny, happy people.
So
A
this
very powerful.
conversation that we're having right now is about real things. And it's about, as you say, being vulnerable and taking responsibility for our part in it and using our voices in safe containers like this, giving ourselves a megaphone and creating a community of support to shift and change. So we're going to be wrapping up in a moment, but I love how you focus on the healing, because this is what this is about, and bringing in men. Anasuya, we're going to have a male person, very powerful male person I just invited. So I'll tell you later who he is. I mean, it's so exciting. But Karen, somewhere along your path, sometimes there's lightning that tears our life and everything open, and that becomes the big kernel of seed to let the light in the water for change. So my last question is, what was that traumatic experience that changed your life and shifted the trajectory of this profound work and message that you're bringing?
Well, I think finding Goddess, it wasn't traumatic, but I think finding Goddess and learning about the social justice and all of that um, was probably the most potent shift in my life. But the most traumatic thing that took me deeper, shall we say, that allowed me to look at this through an even deeper, more profound lens was when my husband fell and hit his head and suffered a brain injury. And I had been attacked by a young woman, looked like a college student. You would never have known in a million years she was anybody to fear. Um, she didn't even know me. It was kind of a random thing, attacked me with a stun gun. Well, that, put into, you know, that was like a domino effect. And just briefly, because I know we're short on time, it it made me realize that the universe was trying to extricate me from a situation that I was living in. And I had to get out of that situation. I didn't realize that even though I was a social justice activist, I was wearing blinders and I was not allowing myself to see the trauma and the abuse that was happening in my own life. And I thought, if I'm a social justice activist and I know about misogyny and patriarchy and all of this stuff, and I am not allowing myself to see it in my own life, how many other women and men are doing the very same thing? And
Yes.
that's what led me to writing the book, Normalizing Abuse, because we do it in so many ways. It's shocking. It's shocking. We think it's just the way it is. There's no other way. We have to endure it. And I mean, I look at, I think it starts in the very beginning. I think as a Catholic, going to Mass, seeing Jesus on the cross, they told us about his suffering and sacrifice and how we want to emulate him. Well, that starts to put in our mind that we should endure suffering and sacrifice rather than say, what about our quality of life? Are we being treated well? Do we have healthy boundaries? We are conditioned from the very beginning to normalize abuse.
Yes.
And that is a
Especially as
huge
women.
topic right now. And we're just ending it in this moment, but this is the beginning of the bigger picture, the bigger conversation for women. And you can see that we brought the big hitters in, Anasuya and Karen Tate. I feel so blessed to be part of this platform. And because it's been so rich and so deep, and I would just like for each of you have a chance to share something to this listening audience that is in your heart to share. Begin with Karen.
I hope you don't think this is hyperbole because I believe I mean this. I know it's only been a short period of time since Kamala and Tim have been on the scene, but I'm getting ready to write a newsletter called Mamala Sekmet. And I see Kamala as the earthly embodiment of the wonderful mother, healer, ferocious, strong goddess Sekhmet. And I see Tim as the new divine masculine.
Yes.
That
Absolutely.
this is the kind of masculine we want,
Yeah.
not the toxic, sick, misogynist masculinity that has been passing for masculine for way too long, and brainwashing our boys to become monsters.
I got a chill on that, and I've mentioned to people, I just met Kamala's husband fortuitously at the airport, and he is the new male, joyously supporting and empowered women. So I leave my summary comments to that, that more of that, let that be a motto. And closing statements, it's yours, my dear.
So many things to say, but the one that came up the most is my prayer for both men and women, but particularly women at this moment, to have the courage to look into the mirror, that the goddess who is on your head, as they say in the Yoruba tradition, the goddess that calls you, that you see the mirror she's putting up in front of you, those of you listening, and see who you truly are. Because what's wanted and needed the most is for women to wake up and come alive and bring our joy and our creativity and our problem solving and our loving and empathy to the world. That's what's missing. We've been silenced, we've been stifled, we've been second and third classed, we've been
Oh, she froze.
stymied, maybe not,
Stymied.
stymied. And we have to say no more. We've been in gilded cages, mostly white women. Our cage for non-white women have no golden bars and diamonds and no silk sheets, but we're all in a cage. And if we could see that we're all mitochondrial Eve's daughters. Literally, we're all sisters. And I mean, there's such a small DNA code that separates us. It's so tiny. But if we can just remember that we are literally, I mean, no hyperbole, sisters, then we can sing the song. I found God in myself. I found God in myself. And I loved her fiercely. I loved her fiercely. I found God in myself. That's from the play For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough.
And blessed be to our listenings and to ourselves, and may we continue to connect and expand together.
Thank you, Karen, for being here and saying yes. You were divinely a divine gift to everyone who will hear this.
It's been fun. It's so, it's not often I get to go deep like this. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
You would be going deep.
All right, ladies, to be continued.